Today we're going to talk about copywriting. So does anyone know what copywriting is compared to content writing or fiction writing? The only main difference is copywriting attempts to have the person who's reading it take an action. That's it. That's the simplified version. So if someone says, oh, I'm a copywriter, what that means is that their job is to make someone who reads something do something. Now, what that thing is, most of the time has something to do with buy, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with buy because there's steps along a funnel before someone buys a product that still is technically copywriting. And so the idea here is to persuade people to eventually take an action. Now, some common actions in copywriting are to, let's say, click or share or opt in. For example, share your email, obviously buy, or schedule a call, or show up to a call, or schedule an appointment and show up to an appointment. If you're buying, buy more. If you've already bought, leave a review. If you've already left the review, share with your friends. There's all sorts of different, test CTAs, call to actions, that are necessary in order to get someone to walk through the life cycle of their relationship with you as a customer or you as a business. Okay, we're going to walk through. Last week we talked about email sequences a little bit, but then I asked everyone, hey, do you want a little bit more of a deeper, more advanced lesson on copywriting? So we're going to talk about this. My background originally actually is in copywriting. I'm going to walk you guys through. Let's go to funnel. So let's say you have a funnel. So this is kind of a classic funnel. So you are a podcast, you're doing a little social media, maybe you're doing some emails, maybe you're doing some paid advertising. There's two types of paid advertising. There's push and pull marketing. So you can either do pull marketing is when you're usually bidding on Google AdWords or someone's searching for you. You can also do this on Amazon, like bidding on certain Amazon keywords or search functions. Whereas push marketing is like radio, meta ads, YouTube ads, television, what we traditionally think of. But there's definitely two different types of ads. One of them scales into infinity, push marketing, because you can essentially advertise as much as you want. Pull marketing is limited to the number of people that are actually searching. So it's limited by the popularity of that search term. But either way, you're going to do a series of ads. And then someone is going to go to your landing page or your website, or it could be your Amazon page. It doesn't matter. But let's just use this as an example for a simple book funnel. And you're going to have a headline, a subheadline. You're going to have a little image. You're going to have a benefit section, a feature section, an FAQ section, and then let's say a checkout section. This is like very bare bones, basic. This is called a wireframe of a landing page. And so the reason why I'm going to talk about this for a second is because you need to understand the context for what the purpose of every part of the copywriting is doing. And what you're doing essentially with copywriting is you're answering the question, should I go to the next step? That's really all you're doing. So let's say you're running a Facebook ad. So the image, what's the job of the image in a Facebook ad? What's the point of the image? What are we trying to do here with the image in an ad? Or it could be a video, but either way, let's call it creative. Attention, but define attention. Stop scrolling. Stop the scroll. So the image, whether it's a video or a graphic, it only has one job. It's to get you to stop scrolling, which is why, for example, in Deal.ai, there's scroll stopping ads, which are great because they stop you from scrolling. And then you've probably seen a lot of ads recently, or maybe you've seen some videos recently where it's like a train about to hit a car or something. You're like, oh my God. And then it switches and it's actually some person talking to you. Have you guys seen those? The kind of switcheroo videos. The reason for that is because something that's really dramatic like that is going to make you stop. Now, the psychological problem with that is that you now all of a sudden don't trust the person because they tricked you. So there's a pros and cons to having your copywriting or your images be too aggressive and too shifty or too slick, because you may get them to stop scrolling, but you have to think downstream of that decision is, well, now you have a new problem, which is now they don't trust you. Either way, the best of both worlds is to have a scroll stopping image that's not cheating. It's actually showing. Then you have a little description here. Usually there's a little headline, and then there's a little description, and then there's a button, and there's a CTA button, and then there's also a little other description, like a secondary description. If you guys seen an ad, this is essentially what it does. So the image, let's say, gets you to stop. Then what do you think the headline is to do? It also depends on the audience. This is getting complex right away. But if you're selling to teenagers, they think it's cool. It doesn't matter. They're like, oh my God, look at this cool person. Whereas if your audience is a little bit older and you have a little bit more money, they're not trying to buy something that's cool and fresh and hip and exciting, they're usually trying to buy something that has value. And they're usually a little bit more protective of their money. So it also depends on your audience. But anyway, let's say you have an image, and just think I'm giving you a hint a little bit. Right? The point of the image is to get you to stop. So now I stopped. And so that's the next thing that you're going to read. All right. So now you're going to read the little headline. And then what's the job of the headline? Just think about it. Think about it even more obviously. The image's job is to get you to stop. So now I read the headline. And think of the headline as like a subject line. Remember from last week, what's the job of the subject line? Not yet to click. So the job is to get you to stop. Then the headline is to pique your interest enough that you read the little words or at least skim them. Then you read the other description. Then you see the CTA button and you click it. So same thing with a book, right? What's the job of the cover of the book, of your book? It's the same concept. You'll notice the pattern here. Grab their attention, but what do you want? You're in a bookstore and grab my attention. Now what's the real job? And they pick it up. Then usually what do? Well, yeah, but buy the book, there's some steps in between. You have to open the book, or usually, I mean, this is what I do, is I read the back. Usually that's what it is. So then the read the back is, what is that called? We have something that writes this for you. Blurb. So if you guys go to the blurb generator inside of BookDaddy, you'll see that's the reason why we have that. If you're interested in it, then what do? Open the book and the book cover. Then you usually read the back, which is like a little summary of what it is. And then usually what a lot of people do, maybe I'm totally wrong, but you read the first sentence of either the intro or the first chapter. Like, it was the worst of times, it was the best of times. Right? There's a lot of, does anyone have like famous first lines? Do you guys know? So the first sentence of the book is to hook you, to give you a sense for what, not only the style of the book, but the first sentence of the book is to get you to read the second sentence of the book. And then the first paragraph is to get you to read the second paragraph, and the third paragraph. And the first chapter is to get you excited so that you read the second chapter. And then once you're in, then you're in. And at some point along that way, some people might look at the book cover and just be like, yeah, I want to buy it, but you might read a couple sentences. So for example, for me, it's very important that I respect the writing of a book. So that's for me. I have to respect the writing of the book. I'm not going to read a book for a very long time or listen to a book for a very long time just for the plot. It's very rare. I want to make sure that I respect the writing. So I'll read the first two paragraphs, and in the first two paragraphs, I know whether it's good writing or not. So essentially, it's like first cover, then goes to the back blurb, then you start reading it, you get a sense for it. If you like it, then you buy it. And then once you buy it, then you read the rest of it. And if you read that one, then maybe you'll read the second one. And if you read the second one, maybe you'll go to their website. And if you go to their website, maybe you'll buy additional things from them. And so then you start this lifetime value relationship. But my point here is that in copywriting, this is the punchline here, is that in copywriting, you want to think about it in terms of like a timeline. So the image, the job is to get you to read the headline. And then if you read the headline, you'll read the description. And if you read the description, you see the CTA. If you see the CTA and you like it, you might click on it. And if you click on it, then you're going to go to the website. And then the job of the headline is to get you, and the whole thing here is to get you to then read the subheadline. And if that's good enough, you might actually click the button and just go straight to the bottom and buy. It's rare, but sometimes you might do it. And then this is called a benefit section. And so if you're like, oh, I'm not really sure, this is called a proof section. And the proof section essentially is to build trust. And then you have a benefit section. And then you say, yeah, but what's really included? And then you have a feature section. And then you say, yeah, but I have a couple questions. And then you do the FAQ. And then you say, okay, I'm ready to buy. But the order of copywriting matters. Okay. So the reason why I'm saying this is that there's essentially two things that you need to understand before you're able to write a single word. If you guys were on my last Friday call, I was talking about outlining your book, right? And you just notice the patterns here. You cannot write. People are like, oh, how long should my first chapter be? It's like, I don't know. It depends on the genre. It depends on you. It depends on the style. It depends on the audience. There's a million things that it depends on. So there's a series of decisions that you have to make. And you have to know those, you have to make those decisions. How many times have I told you have to be a CEO? You have to make those decisions before you can write words. Have you ever worked with like a high school writer, like a young writer? Someone that's literally young. What do they always do? This is at least what I always get from young writers, is they give me like a couple paragraphs and they say, is this good? They give you like a document or a couple paragraphs or maybe a chapter or something. And they say, is this good? Younger writers will do this. And the reason why they're doing that is because they're looking for validation. So they're looking for validation. But the true answer to is something good is it depends on the goal. So without context, someone saying, is this a good piece of writing? I can't give you an answer. Is it grammatically correct? Okay, I guess I can answer that. Are there spelling errors? I can answer that. But beyond that, if I don't understand the point of the writing, there is no good or bad because there's no way of deciding whether or not it's good or bad. So for example, if something is a beautiful sounding poem, but it's in the middle of a crime novel, then it's bad because you're in the middle of a crime novel. Why are you going off on this philosophical, weird, poetic tangent when people want to know what's going to happen next? That's bad writing. So the point here in copywriting is that you have to know what's the point of what you're writing before you can write. So you have to be able to understand where your copywriting fits within the larger spectrum of a funnel in the journey of a customer. And if you don't understand what the job of that piece of copywriting is, then you cannot write it because you don't have a goal for that piece of writing. Does everyone understand? Good is relative to its ability to accomplish the goal. So a headline's job is different than a third paragraph in an email that job is to give value so that someone will read the next email because tomorrow that email is going to have a long call to action for a really high ticket product, but I'm trying to build trust with them today by giving them free value. That is a very different conversation. Is that third paragraph in today's email good or bad? It depends on the context of the goal of that piece of writing. There is nothing to do unless you have the goal. There is nothing to write unless you have the goal. And this is most important with copywriting. You can get away with being a little artsy with book writing and content writing and fiction writing especially, and storytelling and nonfiction. Like that's okay. You can do that. You can just go off on this little tangent and talk about the history of mugs in China and how that's kind of da-da-da-da-da, and let me go back to the story. And if you're especially in literary fiction or anything high nonfiction, like big idea nonfiction, you can get away with that, especially if you're a good writer and you have fans and they're going to listen to you and it's interesting. But with copywriting, you have to understand that usually on the front end of copywriting is $1, meaning that you're spending money, either time or money, which time is money. Because if you're doing something with time, think about it like, oh, well, what could I do in the 4 hours that I'm doing this manual labor thing? What if I was Ubering, like instead made an extra $50? Right. So either you're spending actual $50 or you're spending time, which you could have been doing either finishing something that you can eventually make money with. But there's a problem in the way that people think about like, I want to be a copywriter or I want good copywriting. The same way that it's when a young person says, is this a good piece of writing? They're looking for validation, when in fact, the stakes are very high with copywriting because you're either spending a ton of time doing a marketing campaign or you're spending a ton of money doing a marketing campaign. And at the end of the day, if you're not understanding the step-by-step nature of copywriting, of a funnel, you're going to throw money in the trash. And then what's going to happen is that because you're throwing money in the trash, you're going to now feel bad and you're going to say, oh, I'm bad at marketing, or oh, my book sucks, or oh, it doesn't really work, and I'm bad business, or Facebook ads don't work, or whatever thing you use, or this agency that I hired sucks. And you're not going to realize that, well, no, it's probably because you weren't thinking about every single stage of the journey of the life cycle of that customer. And at every single stage, you have what's called drop off. So you have CPM, which is cost per view, it's cost per 1,000 views. You have cost per click, you have cost per lead, cost per qualified lead, cost per acquisition or CAC. In apps, it's like cost per download. And then you have average order value. It's essentially like how cash flow, how much do people spend with you right away? And then you have lifetime value. These are like the things that you're tracking. Here's why copywriters get paid a lot of money, by the way. The reason why copywriters get paid a lot of money is because let's say I put in dollars into a marketing campaign. And at every single stage, I'm going to have, let's say there's like 1,000 views, okay? Just to keep it simple. So I have 1,000 views, but how many of those people that view the product are actually going to click on it? Maybe it's going to be 200. And then out of the 200 people that click on it, how many of them opt in? Let's say it's 50. And then out of 50, how many of them are going to actually be qualified? Let's say 25. And then how many of them actually buy? Say only 4. So 4 of them buy out of the 25, and each person buys on average, let's say $200. But then it's on a subscription, so the lifetime value is, say, $2,000, and I have a profitable business. So let's just say that that's kind of the math works out. So what if I'm a copywriter, okay, and I increase the lifetime value of that client from 2,000 to 4,000 per client? How valuable is that? What if instead of getting 1,000 views, I have a much better ad, so I can get 10,000 views. Because I'm a great copywriter, the cost per lead on the website, because I'm really good at building the funnel, now all of a sudden it's 150 people. I have 150 leads instead of 50. You see how changing this would be called CRO, or redoing your funnel, conversion rate optimization. What if I'm a CRO expert and I can triple your number of opt-ins by changing your headlines, by redoing your website, by making the benefit stack a little bit better? I just tripled the number of leads that you got just by changing the words and a little few of the images. So now the same dollar is worth 3 times the value in terms of marketing. So this is why my point is that there is no such thing as like general copywriting. There is the job of if you're a CPM, the job is to essentially go viral and have people click and share whatever you're sharing. The cost per click is usually your offer, the copywriting of your offer. The cost per lead and the cost per qualified lead is the quality of your funnel, the copywriting on your funnel. The CPA is usually the quality of your opt-in page or your conversion page, whether that's your checkout page, for example, or your abandoned cart page. And then your average order value is the copywriting and the videos that are on your upsells or your bundles. And then your lifetime value is usually how good your social media and your newsletter is. So you see how this is all copywriting? It's all copywriting. But each one of them, if you just make 50% gain in any one of these, downstream, this is the math of business, downstream from that improvement, you could double your business because now a lead costs twice as less, or a view costs twice as less, or someone that's buying is going to buy twice as much. That's really the goal of copywriting. And so you're essentially taking someone on a journey from who the hell are you to let me buy a subscription and pay you for the next 5 years. That's a pretty insane journey. And at every single step along the way, the likelihood that they're going to move on to the next step is very low. So your job as a copywriter, which you are a copywriter in your own business, is to move someone along the path with the least amount of friction and persuade them that moving to the next step is worth their time and worth their money. I always say that marketing is half math, but half psychology. And with psychology, you want to ask why as many times as possible and get down to the absolute deeper amygdala. The deeper you are, the closer you are to someone's amygdala, the easier it is to sell someone. The question is, why do people really buy things? Why do people really buy things? Even if you're spiritual, I think most of you believe that DNA exists. So why? You're trying to go, what is DNA trying to do? There's essentially 2 things that DNA wants to do. What does DNA want to do? Or like single-celled organism, what does it want to do? 2 things. Yep. Reproduce, survive. Exactly. You guys got it. Okay. So a lot of our deep desires have to do with this. So if you translate this to what are some things that we do in modern copywriting that actually are based on reproduction? Qualify, image, beauty. I want to look better. That's because of reproduction. What else? I mean, sex, essentially. That's fine. Everyone knows that. Sex sells. Just brainstorm with me. I want you guys to think about this. This is obviously like physical safety. Freedom. Freedom is actually about survival because it gives you optionality so that in case of an emergency, you can move. Money is all of these. So the reason why money is so important is because it relates to all of these. Because if you have money, you can increase all of these. Yep. Food, like literal physical needs. So like food, water, shelter. So what are some other things that you guys do for purpose? Purpose is actually reproduction deep down because your purpose is why you're doing what you're doing in the long term to leave legacy. So a lot of times purpose is wrapped up in legacy. Like my purpose for being is I did something that was worthwhile, which is a version of reproduction. It's like producing your ideas into the future, not necessarily your physical body, but the ideas that maybe something you built that you've left behind. Legacy is huge. A lot of times people like mastery. So some of you guys are just kind of tinkerers and you just want to get really good at something. That's honestly both mastery and survival, depending on which one. Or that's both reproduction and survival. And so it's more than just these. But if you start to think about it, you're like, ooh, people want mastery. They want safety for themselves and their family. They want freedom. They want good food and health. They want sex. They want purpose and legacy. They want to be good at something. There's one other that's like kind of for both of them, which is status. So a lot of times people buy fashion, for example, for status. And status is actually for reproduction in one way, but it's also for safety in another way. Why is status for safety? This is interesting psychology. So what does status have to do with survival? I'll give you a hint. This is like why people are afraid of public speaking. The big idea is that like if you have higher status, it's more likely that you're going to survive because not only people respect you, But the opposite is true as well. A lot of times when people are very scared to do things, right? Or they don't want to, when people are shy, or they don't want to do something because they think they're going to be found out. The reason why is because they're afraid of being judged, because if they're judged, then they'll be kicked out of the tribe. They'll find that their status is so low that they don't have skills, and they're like, oh, everyone knows that Jonathan's an idiot, so let's kick him out of the tribe. And if he's kicked out of the tribe, you actually will die. So status is both for reproduction, but it's also on the opposite extreme. The reason why we're scared to do things that we're not very good at yet, and the reason why we procrastinate and all that kind of stuff, is actually because we're trying to protect our status so that we can survive. So are you guys following this? So the reason why this is important is because when you are writing, if you're going to fear to be judged, is huge. What people fear of being judged is a misinterpretation of reality. Because everyone that you respect and love is the person that goes out on a limb and does things. Everyone thinks that they're the exception. Right? I told this story before, but imagine you're at a wedding and two people come up to you, and the one person says, I'm a really good dancer, I'm amazing at dancing. And then they go out and they dance and they're like really good at dancing. And there's someone else that comes up to you and they says, oh my God, I'm so scared, I've never danced, I'm really horrible at dancing. And then they go out and dance and they're really horrible and they're really bad because it's their first time and no shit. Who do you respect more? Most people would respect the person that was like scared and did it anyways, right? And because if you're like, oh, I'm really good at dancing, and like go out there and I'm good at dancing, I would not respect them. But if someone is nervous and they go out and do it, that's how people think of you, honestly. And then sometimes that doesn't work because you have toxic families, but usually that's because, this is going to get into a psychological thing here, but the reason why most people are that try to hold their family back is because they're afraid of the comparison between your best self and their self, which is given up. And so if they're not believing in you, it's actually because they don't want the pressure of comparison of you winning, even though you grew up in the same area. But this got into a deep psychology of families, dynamics, and human nature and all this stuff. So let me just give you two questions. It's going to give you the answer to all copywriting. So whenever you're writing any copywriting, what you're saying, is this optimized for getting the person to take the next action? And now you guys know what I mean by next action. I don't mean buy the thing. Imagine if the ad was like, buy this, and then the call to action was buy this, and the description was buy this, and then the headline was buy this, and then the subheadline was buy this, and then the benefits stack was buy this, right? It doesn't make sense. Copywriting is not buy. Copywriting is get them to take the next action so that it's like a chain, so that the next action can get you to get that person to take the next action and the next action and the next action, which eventually will lead to a sale. So you have to take them on. It's like, let's go on a date first, like little by little by little. The headline is good enough that it gets them to read the subheadline, and the subheadline is good enough to get them to read the bullet stack, and then the bullet stack is good enough to get them to at least think about clicking the button. And if they don't click the button, that's okay, because then they go to the next section and they're like, okay, do I trust this person? And then you have testimonials, you have a proof stack or something like that, and they're like, okay, I trust this person. They're like, yeah, but is this really worth it? And then you have a benefit stack, which tells them all the benefits of why it's worth it. And then they're like, yeah, but what's really included? I don't really know if this works. And then you have a feature stack, and the feature stack will be all of the bells and whistles of like all those benefits that I talked about. Here's why they're really true. And then after the feature stack, they're like, yeah, but I still have a few questions. So, and you have an FAQ, and the FAQ answers those questions. They're like, okay, well, yeah, this actually makes sense. It's okay. How much is it? And then you go to the how much is it section, and in the checkout page, you always have like this is how much it's worth / and then here's a reminder of the image. And oh, by the way, here's a 30-day money back guarantee. And oh, by the way, here's this great price that the offer ends soon. You should buy now. But I didn't say, oh, by the way, you should buy now until they saw an image. They saw a description, they read a headline, they clicked on an ad, then they went to the headline of the landing page, then they had the subheadline, then they had the bullet stack, then they had the call to action, then they read testimonials, then they saw a benefit stack, then they saw, you see what I'm saying? It's all just going down the journey. That's what this is, again, just like the book cover. Let's use nonfiction for an example. The book cover and the title is to get you to be intrigued to read the subheading or the tagline, or doesn't really matter what you call it. And then you're like, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. And then you read the back and you're like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And then you read the first paragraph and you're like, okay, I'll buy it. It's like the same thing with all businesses. Is you're taking people on this slow journey, little by little. So is this optimized for getting the person to take the next action, not buy the thing? Is this good? Doesn't exist. There is no good. So then the next thing is, am I writing as close to a deep psychological trigger as possible. So that's the second question of good copywriting. Possible. Well, possible. These are the two questions that you're really answering. So is this good writing? No, bad question. Is this optimized for getting the person to take the next action and not general? Or am I writing as close to a deep psychological trigger as possible, not staying on the surface? Why? Does this poke at status, mastery, image, sex, purpose, legacy, safety, freedom, food, mastery, status, their family, survival, reproduction? If the closer you are to that, the better the copywriting is. Jonathan, can you put an outline for the typical journey of the funnel? I have a class on funnels as well. It's essentially like the ad or marketing is to get them to go to the landing page or the website. And then the landing page, the goal is to get them to opt in. And then the opt-in is to get them to read emails and texts. And then the emails and text eventually get them to buy. That's a very simple, dumbed down version, but I can get much more advanced. Let me kind of walk you through this. So, for example, I went back to this, right? So the headline, subheadline, and then this is called the benefits section. You always want to have a benefits section here. And benefits are always first. Benefits is the outcome, and features is the reason why the outcome is trustworthy. This is called a wireframe. This is a funnel or a website. When you're building a website or a funnel, you have to do a wireframe first. When people say like, oh, I need to build a website, it's like, yeah, what does that mean? It's like saying I need to write a book without having an outline. Like you can't write an outline. You can't write a book if you don't have like a general structure of the story. And you can't just create a website. I guess you can, but it will suck and it won't do anything for you. So you have to know, like, what are we doing? What is the goal of the headline? Let me give you some word for word copywriting tricks. But anyways, the idea here is it's essentially impossible for me to say like, oh, this is how you write good copy, because good copy is a combination of the answer to these two questions plus digging at the psychological triggers that are going to make people feel about what they want to do. So a couple things that I'm not going to dig into this because you guys can read the book, but Influence by Robert Cialdini and Contagious by Jonah Berger. So Contagious, Jonah Berger, and Influence by Robert Cialdini. These are like most scientific deconstructions of sales and persuasion. So there's a lot of like Grant Cardone, 10X kind of stuff, and like that's fine. Obviously, hard work matters, but these are scientists. Robert Cialdini is a professor at Stanford, and Jonah Berger is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. So they're doing academic studies to literally figure out what is persuasive. Okay, and so these two books, like if you want to make money in a business and you don't read these two books, then you're just not serious. So you got to read these two books. I had the pleasure of meeting both of them, working a little bit with them, had lunch with Robert, spent the whole day with him, and Jonah was really cool as well in New York City. So I worked with these two are insane. And so I'll just give you a quick rundown of their two books. I sent emails about them in the last couple of days, but Robert Cialdini says that people will go essentially, again, they're going to take the next journey with you if you use these tools. Reciprocity means if I give you something for free, then it's more likely that you'll give me something back. So the example that he uses in the book is, it's kind of a nasty example, but it's like the monks that will give you flowers and then they ask you to donate. So that's like reciprocity, right? If someone gives you something, it's like, all right, I gotta give them back. But a positive version of this is like, there's people, I'm big into running. There's some YouTube channels. It's so funny. Like a lot of creative people are just so bad at business. There's some YouTube channels that I like, that I follow, that I've literally had to try to find their like email address and be like, how do I give you money? This is insane. Like, you've done all of these free YouTube videos. Like, where do I buy something? Like, you guys have people that you follow on social media that you're like, where do I buy something? This is insane. Like, you're giving me so much value. Like, do you have a Patreon? No. Like, do you have a t-shirt? Like, I feel guilty. Like, there was this guy that I signed up for a program that he had done, and I was like, this is too cheap. I want to do it. It's because they gave me so much value over time, reciprocity, that I felt like morally obligated to give them something back. So that's really important. Scarcity, you guys all know what this is. There's only 5 left, or there's only 2 left, or there's a deadline. The interesting example that he uses in the book is actually Mormon like temples. So whenever there's a new Mormon temple, there's apparently like a room inside of the temple that only like the top people can use. And unless you're like their version of a cardinal or something, you can't go inside this. But they say, and they use it as a tactic to like recruit when they're building a new one. They say, oh, well, you can only come into this one room in the temple that will never be allowed. You never be able to see it for the rest of your life, ever, unless you come in like the first week that it opens. And so then what ends up happening is they have this is very smart, right? So you have this temple that opens, and then all these people that are not Mormon, but they're curious, are like, oh, I want to go into the room that I'll never be able to go again because it's scarcity. And so you're only going there because someone said, oh, you can never go there again. Just the pattern is interesting. Right? Black Friday is something like this, right? It's like if there's real scarcity, then you're more likely to buy it. The authority is your past success or your past wins, or if you have like a resume or you have a degree or something like that. Doctor approved, 9 out of 10 doctor approved, that's authority. That's essentially answering the trust objection. Commitment consistency, what this does is you get people to slowly but surely commit. If you get them to like take small commitments, which is a big idea of what I've been saying from the beginning, is like get them to take one thing and then they do another thing and then eventually they buy. You get them to commit, and people want to have emotional consistency in their brain. So if you said, a lot of salespeople will do this. They'll say, listen, and I understand you say it's about the money because blah, 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 but what if it was this and this and this and this and this and this, right? And then they're like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's it. And you kind of back them into a corner. I'm not saying this is like super ethical. It is ethical if it's like a really good product and it's going to help them. But if you get them to commit to these small things, they want to be consistent, so they'll commit to something bigger later down the line. Liking is just charming. It's like being likable and having an authentic self. Some people are going to buy from you because you're likable. And some people, like, I'm not likable in the traditional, like, empathetic way, but I think a lot of people that do like me for the fact that I have your best interest at heart, but I don't pussyfoot around like the truth. And so for some people, that's not likable, but for other people, that's very likable. So likable is subjective, but it's subjective to whoever you're talking to. And then social proof is like number of 5-star reviews or the number of people that have already purchased it or something like that, right? That's what social proof is. So these are like, you got to ask yourself when you're writing copywriting, like, am I digging into reciprocity, scarcity, authority, commitment, consistency, liking, and social proof? And if you're doing all 6 of these in your landing page or your newsletters or whatever it may be, well, then you're more likely that someone's going to buy whatever you're selling. Jonah Berger, this is a little bit more complex. I kind of get to something real quick near by the end, but he did a whole study on like how things go viral, and it's weird. It's not what you think. It's not like the way that things go viral is. Do you remember the folded piece of paper? Do you guys remember that? Like you fold a piece of paper 50 times, it reaches the sun. So that's the same concept with virality. Virality is not TikTok or Instagram or YouTube just like arbitrarily push it out to 1 million people. That's not how the algorithm works. That's not how virality works. Virality is actually person to person. But what it does is that it gets the network effect, and the math of network effect gets really crazy really fast, right? You have one person is 2, and then 2 is 4, and then 4 is 8, and then all of a sudden you have like millions and millions of people. So this is why the number one thing that predicts whether or not Instagram and TikTok are going to show your video to more people is the number of shares it gets. Because how many of you do you have, like, for example, with my wife, I probably share with her like 5 to 10 videos a day and vice versa. And same with my sister. So I have like some people that I literally will, if I see something interesting, I'm going to share it with them. And that the number of people that are shared, then they'll share it with other people. And that's actually how things go viral. So the question is why, the question is not why do things go viral? The real question is why are things shared with other people? And there's essentially 6 reasons why. So one is if it's an interesting story that they can tell back themselves. Another is it gives practical value that the person that they're sharing it with might get some benefit from. Another one is if they can share it and then they get some social clout from it being public. So sharing something on like social media, but to your like actual page. Emotion, the number one emotion that's shareable is awe. So awe, the feeling, it's like almost a spiritual feeling, feeling small, but feeling small and like inspired at the same time. Awe is the number one emotion for virality. Triggers is just a fancy word for meaning like there's a CTA that actually tells people to like actually share it. And then social currency is that if they share it, they might get some clout to some extent. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. It just means like their status goes up in that friend group if they share good things. So these are just some like really advanced, but also deep psychological things you want to talk about. I'm going to do one final thing. There's a couple, I came up with this, but this is a deep thing that you want to think about in terms of your sale. So I always say there's 7 stages of a sale. So the 7 stages of a sale are first is what's the problem? 2 is what's vision without the problem? So this would be like another way to say it as a benefit. Then what is the theoretical solution, the best case scenario? And then our solution is that best case scenario. Then you answer objections. I'll tell you the different objections for a second. And then there's 6 objections. So you answer the objections. Then you restate the vision. Because now essentially you're like, okay, I don't have any reason not to buy, but now why am I buying again? You restate the vision and then you ask for the close. So every time you're doing copywriting, you want to take people down this psychological journey. I would say that only the one caveat here that people often miss out is the problem is relative to who. So relative to whom. So a lot of times people will talk about the problem that they're addressing, but they won't talk about the avatar, because the problem is the problem that you are solving as a business person or your book or whatever it may be usually is relative to a specific avatar. So this is kind of a psychological journey that you want to take people on inside in your copy. And then if you combine that with these psychological triggers, you're going to be like a master. I'll just really quickly give you guys the 6 objections just so you guys have them. I know I'm trying to smash in a lot here, but so just think about it this way. Someone give me a product, like just any product, just brainstorm any product. Tea. So tea for whom? Moms. Okay. And what's the problem that they have? Are they trying to lose weight? Are they trying to get caffeine? Are they trying to be peaceful? Are they, okay. But health, too bitter. So too bitter is actually, this is interesting. So weight loss tea, health. So let's ask ourselves, let's go on this psychological journey. So what is the problem that tea is solving? Health. So why do I care about health? While you do your taxes. Yeah. But again, here's what's going to happen if you, I'm going to walk you through. Yeah, but why do you want to live to be 200? Which one do you guys find more compelling? These are the problems. I'm a genie in a lamp, and I'm going to solve these problems for you. You're going to be healthier. That's number A. Let's imagine. 1 is healthier. 2 is feeling vitality. Ready? 3 is get to spend more time with my family that I love. Which one is the most powerful? So I hope you guys just had an aha moment for copywriting. I hope you're connecting the dots here. So when someone says good copywriting, what is this good copywriting? The reason why I went off on a 30-minute tangent about the meaning of life and philosophy and psychology and why we're here and go why. And the reason why I did this is because how are we going to write this headline for this tea company is we're going to start with the problem. Someone said, what's the product? Tea. Okay, what problem does it solve? You might say energy, but you might say, do you see how you can't even write a single word until you, who are we talking about? We're talking about moms. Oh, okay, interesting. So what's the real problem we're trying to solve with moms? What do they really care about? What's the thing that a mom is going to actually care about? The thing that they care about more than anything is their family and their children. And so you say, oh, well, they're drinking tea because it's healthier. It's like, why do they care about healthy? Oh, because they want to live longer. Why do they want to live longer? Because they want to spend more time with their family. Now we can write some copy. We're selling tea, but we're addressing the actual problem. Now I understand why we went through this hour-long psychological deconstruction of the meaning of life, is because that's what good copywriting is. It's being a psychologist to understand why are people really doing what they're doing. And then you can imagine seeing an ad. It's a picture of a mom like hugging her 2 children with a smiling face, and she's like so happy, and she's drinking a cup of tea, and maybe they're all drinking a cup of tea together. And then there's some tagline about tea is let you spend more time with your family, spend more quality time with your family, like Jonathan's tea. You're like, oh, interesting. So all of a sudden that I might click on. And now I'm on a page and I see images of tea and I see images of family and I'm a mom and I'm like, oh my God. And then it's the benefits are like live to be 200 years old. Maybe that's extreme, but like you get what I'm saying. It's like live much longer in order to spend more time with your children. Like have a community, be the belle of the ball when people come over to your house and they love your tea. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that is a benefit to a mom versus maybe like an elite athlete. It might be, hey, do you know that like the caffeine and coffee is like really bad for you and it's kind of jittery, and what you need as an athlete is to like that's a totally different problem that you're solving. So I know we're past the time, but let me give you the 6 objections. So the 6 objections are price, but price is always relative to value. So when people say like, oh, it's the money, it's not the money. It's the money relative to what you think the value is. So the first objection is price relative to value. The way that you answer this objection is either you make them understand that the value is much higher than they think, or you just have to educate them about the market and like, hey, listen, this is like totally fair price and you're not going to get anything cheaper. But really the best way to increase value is to do 2 things. This is really advanced, but they both have to do with time. So what you want to do is you want to take their current situation and map it out. If they did the thing, meaning buy it, or they didn't do the thing, and you say, well, your life might not be that crazy in the next 10 days, but In 5 years, imagine over time, if you buy this thing, the gap between where you're going to be and where you would be without this is very, 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 very big, which means now the value is much bigger. So the value is not in relation to the money right now. The value is in relation to, if I buy this thing, how much better is it going to make my life in 5 years? And that might be a huge value. And so then you have to understand that you need to make people understand that the value is not now, the value is in the future. So price is relative to value, and value is relative to time. Anyways, that's this. I keep on getting really advanced, but price relative to value. The next one is time relative to value, and other people is essentially like, how painful is this going to be? Like Alex Hormozi says, like, you have to make it easy for people. So people, they may not care about the price, but they're like, oh my God, this is going to be a lot of work, or I'm going to have to put this thing together. Like, I know there's sometimes where like I pay way more for something because it's like easier to put together, or I like the convenience essentially, right? So people will pay more for convenience of not having to do anything. Time relative to value is pain. And then the next ones are all trust. So they don't trust the company. They don't trust the salesperson, the person that's talking to them. They don't trust the product. And then finally, they don't trust themselves. So yeah, assembled for you. Or if I'm going to do something, I'll like pay someone to like do it for me or something. But so these are like the 6 objections that you usually have to answer. So they're like, oh, yeah, that sounds fine. You're really nice. I really like you. You seem like a straight up guy. I mean, the company seems fine, but like, this is a new product hasn't been on the market yet. I don't really trust the product. Or listen, I know the product is really great. It sounds great. And like, listen, you're a really nice guy, but like, I saw that there was a lawsuit from the company from 3 years ago. So I'm just not really sure. Or I know this company is really good. And honestly, like, they've been really good, but I walked in there and like, the customer support person was so mean. I'm just not giving them money. Like, you can feel that. And then there's another one where it's, oh, well, yeah, I mean, the company's great, totally valuable, like it makes sense, but my case is different. I'm a unique snowflake, and I'm like the only exception in the world. It's not going to work for me, and it's not going to work for me because I'm special. And so they don't trust themselves essentially. So that's always like the sixth objection. So, anyways, that was a lot. So hopefully that was valuable. Okay, bye-bye. Cheers.